Hi and welcome to Old Time Knowledge. It's time for me to stock up my pantry for cold weather. I've been running low on all kinds of things. I've recently done some stew beef or like canned pot roast, some summer vegetable soup, and this time I'm doing Amish Chicken Corn Soup. Those other ones I already have videos of, which I will link in the description below the video, but this is one I have never done for this channel, but it is too good to not show you how to make. This is from the Amish Canning Cookbook by Georgia Verosa. There are so many good recipes in this cookbook, but this is one of my absolute favorites. And it's super simple to make, just very few ingredients, but boy, is it good. I am using bone-in chicken breasts. In the past, I have made this with boneless, skinless chicken breasts because that was all I was able to get. I don't know why, but for some reason, grocery stores around here stopped carrying bone-in chicken breast for a while. You had to go like to a very specific grocery store if you wanted to get it, and it cost a lot. So anyway, but this time I made sure to get this because I know this is going to be phenomenal. It's 4 pounds. According to the recipe, it says 3 to 4 pounds, so that's what I've got. And I'm just going to put this in some water with the bay leaves and the thyme. I'm not even adding salt or anything right now, and I am going to just let this just boil for, I don't know, 1.5 to 2 hours. The whole thing with this is you want this chicken to just stew in this pot until really it's just falling apart, like coming off the bone, just really super tender. So I'm getting ready to add a 1/2 teaspoon of thyme. But you know what? One thing I want to point out here is this. Take a look at this. This is so aggravating. Do you see that chicken breast down there has no skin on it? That's how it came in the package. 2 of them had skin and 1 didn't. I'm just like, what is going on? Used to, you could buy packages of chicken breast on the bone with the skin, and they would all look beautiful. The skin would look really healthy and everything. But this time, I've got a chicken breast in there that doesn't even have skin. Anyway, okay, here is the 1/2 teaspoon of thyme, which I'm going to add. I'm not going to add salt or pepper. I'm just going to add salt later to the jars. I'll explain about that later. Here I am adding 2 bay leaves to the jar. And this will just stew with the chicken and just give it some amazing flavor. So I'm going to just let this like I say, just boil for like 1.5 to 2 hours, however long it takes for the chicken to get super tender, to be falling off the bone. And then I'll be back and take you to the next step. And here we are. Now it's time to add the corn to the pot because the chicken should be done. I'm going to just check it and show you what I was looking for. And when I put my fork in there and just barely push my fork in a little bit, see how that chicken is just coming right off the bone? It's so tender. I'm not having to hardly work at it at all. That's what you want. This is going to be so flavorful, and I cannot wait to have this. Now, I have to laugh at this, y'all. So this is a 1/2 bag of this Pick Sweet white corn. I miscounted the number of bags I needed to buy. Either that or I don't know what happened. I don't have enough here for the recipe. The recipe calls for 96 ounces, 3 quarts, 96 ounces. These bags are 22 ounces each. And so I've got about 2.5 bags. That still leaves me short. But no fear, I have some cans of corn that I can add. The recipe definitely says you can use frozen, fresh, or canned corn. So I'm going to be subbing in some canned corn. I love this can opener, y'all. I'm going to link this in the show notes below. This is so cool because it definitely does not leave any sharp edges on your can. And it's so easy to turn. You don't have to worry about fooling with having a little blade go down in there. I don't know. This thing just works so good. So I'm going to get these lids off. I'm going to quickly drain the cans off camera. And then I'm going to dump these cans right in the pot. It's going to create a pretty cool sort of multicolor corn for the soup, so it won't be just white. And I'm not doing that on purpose. I mean, it'll end up looking cool, but in the end, I'm just doing what I got to do to make sure I've got the ingredients that I'm supposed to have to make this soup. And once I have all the corn in there, I'm just going to leave everything to stew for a while, just a few minutes, just to bring the corn all up to temperature so that the soup sort of gets hot again. I added all that frozen corn, and so we don't want to just leave it like that. We want to get that frozen corn a chance to take on some of that hot water to help it get tender first. And then once I've done that, won't take that long at all, then it'll be time to start getting the jars ready. And just a quick heads up, I am going to be shifting microphones in a minute because I'm using this one right now for voiceover after the fact, but soon you're going to start hearing the audio through the microphone on my phone, which is what I was using when I was actually doing the canning. So just giving you a heads up in case the audio changes. All right, I gotta say, it feels so good to be back doing this again. I just haven't done one of these in so long, and I feel just so happy to just be here at my stove and getting jars ready. And I've got my double canner ready this time for a double batch. Y'all, I'm so excited about this. So I'm gonna go ahead and start getting these jars prepared. First thing is, I did not salt the pot because usually you would say salt to taste. So you would salt it until everything tastes just right. I'm just going to go with the tried and true ½ teaspoon of salt for every single jar. I've not added any salt whatsoever to this pot. I am going to add just a little bit of pepper to this before I start putting it in the jars. But that's just going to be by sight. But as far as the salt goes, I'm going to add a ½ teaspoon of salt to every pint jar. This recipe actually is supposed to do 20 jars. I'm not going to spread this that thin. I'm going to spread it over 18 jars if I make it that far. That's still a gracious plenty. But you're going to see how I do this to make sure every jar has a roughly equal amount. All right, so here we go. And I'll be speeding this up where it makes sense to do so, because you don't need to sit and watch me slowly and methodically put salt in every jar. I'm going to add some pepper to the soup. Just adding some pepper. I'm going to give this a good stir. Let me show you this. Look at how pretty that looks with all that different colored corn. And it's just, I mean, I would have used all white corn if I had bought enough, but I just didn't quite buy enough bags. So I had plenty of cans of corn in my pantry, so it's easy to use those. So, and you see little bits of that chicken in there. So, but now I have to actually get this chicken and shred it and fill the jars. So that's what I'm going to do now. So mostly I'm just going to be taking these bones out and throwing them away, and then cutting up the chicken. I have my counter as a total mess here, so I can't set this down, but I'm just giving you this quick visual to show you deboning the chicken. All right, now I'm going to speed things up again while I'm actually just removing the bones and the skin and stuff like that, and just tell you a few things. One is, y'all, I totally should have taken the chicken out of the pot before I added all the corn. I just didn't think about it. So it was fine. It was totally fine, but I will recommend it for you if you are doing this. Take the chicken out before you add the corn, because that pot's going to get really full otherwise. Also, I don't recommend leaving the skin in the jars because the skin just gets way too soft after you pressure can it. You can do it, but like, I'm not a fan of that. Now here's the thing, you absolutely can use it just shredded. But the reason why I'm going to cut it into small bite-sized pieces is it makes it easier to eat. When you're getting a spoonful of soup, you don't have hot, stringy chicken hanging off of your spoon. Instead, you have a nice little bite and you can just eat it one bite at a time. So I'm going to chop this up and then I'll put it in the jars. So here I am filling up the jars, and I'm going to tell you my process for this is I just kind of eyeball it. I see how much chicken I have on that plate, and I see how many jars I have to fill, and so I do my best to add a little bit to each jar, and then after I've added a little bit to each jar, then I look at how much I have again, and I try to think about, okay, I need to divide it up some more, and I need to make sure I'm topping off any jars that might seem a little bit low. If I have to, and there's like chicken, a little bit more chicken in one jar than another, I might borrow from one to put it in the other. But the main thing is I'm just looking to have a roughly equal amount in each jar. I'm not weighing this out or anything. I guess I could if I wanted to be really precise, but I've had pretty good experience just doing just what I'm doing, just taking the chicken and just dropping it in there until each one looks like it has a similar amount. And then once I've got the chicken in all the jars, then I will be adding in the corn, and then after I add in the corn, then I'll be adding in the broth. So, alrighty. So it looks like I have chicken in all the jars. Everything seems good to go. Now it's going to be time to add corn to all the jars, and I'm going to follow the same process. I'm going to do what I can to make sure each of them has an equal amount, and then I'll go through and add more as needed, and then I'll fill everything up with the broth. So I'm going to speed things up again, and that way you can quickly see me get this process done, and we'll move on to canning. Alrighty, now it's time for me to clean the rims, which I'm going to do. I'm putting some vinegar in this little dish, and I'm going to get a paper towel and just wipe the top of each of these jars. And I'll speed it up when I do that. But what I wanted to tell you is I neglected to mention it while it was going fast before, but that was just water in that little kettle that I was adding there at the end. This broth is already very flavorful from the chicken stewing in it for so long, and my pot just is not deep enough to accommodate probably the amount of water I should use. But adding that little bit of water to each jar to top them off is not going to negatively impact the flavor at all. So if you get to where you filled up all of your jars and you're lacking some water, just add regular water and it'll be totally fine. So like I said, I have just gotten a paper towel and I've dipped it in some white vinegar, and I'm just doing this, just wiping the rims of each of these jars to make sure that they're clean, there's no grease, there's no debris. That will ensure a good seal. And once I'm done wiping all the rims, I'll just pour the white vinegar in the canner. That way with the water, it will help prevent mineral deposits from being on the jars. It'll help the jars be clear when I'm done processing them. These are very old jars. This is lamb mason. This is like an old square jar. This was one of my grandmother's. I ended up with it. I don't even remember how. I think she might have had some pickles in it or something, but that's what I've got. It's wonderful. They're so thick. It's so different than the jars they make today. They're just so sturdy. So let's see. Also, I have had my lids in here. This is water, and I had just put the water in the microwave for about 1 minute and 15 seconds and then dropped my lids in here, and they've just been hanging out in here until it was time for me to put them on the jars. I know they say with lids today you don't have to do that, but I don't know. It just seems like when I do it, I almost never have any failures. If I don't do it, then I might have 2 or 3 failures. So maybe it has to do with the kind of jar lids I buy. I don't know. By the way, I will link that in the description below, the jar lids I buy. By the way, I just wanted to mention, I know that there are a lot of people who do canning videos on YouTube who promote a particular brand of canning lids. It's very popular. I've mentioned them a couple of times on my channel because they sent me some to test out, and they were good. They're perfectly good lids. I don't really have any complaints about them at all. The only thing is that in the end, I need to buy the lids that are most affordable for me. I need to be able to know that if I'm buying this thing that I'm using and then throwing away, as long as it works and it does its job and it's safe, that's really what I care about. And let's face it, all canning lids are made in China these days. There's not some factory in the United States of America that's churning out these lids that's making something just extraordinarily high quality to compete. And because, again, this is a disposable item, I'm going to buy what's affordable for me and that I know works, that I've had a good experience with. I've had a box of over 200 of these, and I've not had a single failure, except for in the case of a couple of jars where it was definitely my fault. So I'm going to link what I buy in the show notes below. I just wanted to put my 2 cents in about that. All right, now it's time for me to put the rings on. Couple things. One is people often ask, what does it mean for rings to be finger tight? Because the instructions always say finger tight. Oh, and you see me, I'm pouring this vinegar that I use to clean the rims in the canner. The finger tight thing just means that when you are putting the rings on your jars, you want to put the rings on until the lid is being held down by the ring, but that it's not too tight. You don't want to take the ring and really twist it really hard. This is not something you're trying to seal to make sure it's going to last like that forever. The whole point of the ring is just to keep the lid on the jar. So as you're putting the rings on the jars, what you're wanting to do is you just put it on barely, just test it just like that. And then once you can start to turn the jar, it's finger tight. Like once the ring is on well enough that if you keep turning, it's going to turn the jar, then it's finger tight. Now, when you take the jars out of the canner after you're finished processing them, you'll probably find that some of the jars will have the rings have loosened up a bit. And that's just part of the heat trying to escape from the jars, and it causes the rings to move. Usually what I will do is when I take the jars out of the canner with the jar lifter thing, if some of the jars feel particularly loose, I'll tighten them. I'll just snug them up a little bit, but I'm not cranking them on. I'm really just, again, getting them back to finger tight again, and that's only to ensure that there's enough of a contact seal with the lid to the jar to make sure that as that last bit of air evacuates while it's trying to, the temperature's coming down and it's doing that whole process that is science magic to me. But when it's doing that way, it's just keeping the lid on the jar. But after that, like that's all. So again, you're just wanting the rings on finger tight. Process them when you take them out of the canner. If they feel a little too loose, you can certainly just snug them up a little bit, when you set them out, to just let them come down to room temperature. But otherwise, don't mess with the rings and don't mess with the lids until the jars have come completely down to room temperature after they're done processing. So as you can see, I have 1 layer of jars in the canner now. Because this is a double layer canner, I'm going to be putting my other little rack in, and then I'll be setting more jars on top of that. Now I will tell you, even though this is a really nice canner, I don't use it a lot because most of the time when I'm canning, I'm just doing a batch. I'm doing a single batch of like 10 jars and that's it, sometimes less. But for this particular recipe, because it's so easy to make so much and it's such an inexpensive soup to make and to put away, I'm usually, this is the only soup just about that I'll use this canner for. Maybe if I'm doing batches of beans, I'll use this canner. But a lot of times if I'm doing something like, say, pot roast or like chuck roast, beef stew. I can't remember what I have the recipe called on my channel, but I'll link it in the show notes below. But when I do that, or when I do, say, summer vegetable soup or whatever, I'll usually just do 1 batch at a time just because of space constraints in, for instance, for the summer vegetable soup, the pot that I get that ready in. And in the case of the beef stew, I just like doing 1 batch at a time. I certainly have had more of experience with failures with the double layered canner, and I don't know if it's just because there's so many in the canner or what, but when I'm doing something like the beef stew, that meat is expensive, and I certainly don't want jars to go to waste or that I have to eat them now and not be able to put them on my pantry because of failures of the seal. So, alrighty, so now I'm going to put the lid on. Alrighty. And turn my burner on, and I'm going to just wait for this to get to where it's issuing a steady stream of steam from this vent right here. And once that happens, I will start a timer for 10 minutes. I'll be back. All right, you're just going to have to take my word on this, but this is now steaming. Ooh, yeah, I'm not holding my hand there. It's definitely steaming. 10 minutes, and then I'll be putting my little weighted gauge on top. I've gotten to where in the past few years I've been using a weighted gauge instead of the little thing that came with my canner, because this way I don't have to worry about whether or not that's working. So I will be back in 10 minutes. No, I won't be back in 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, I'll be putting this weighted gauge on here, and then I'll wait until it comes up to pressure, and then I'll start timing this for 75 minutes. So I will be back when this is all done processing. Alrighty. All right, we've got rocking. So now I'm going to set my timer for 75 minutes and let this go. And I will bring you back once it's all done. Alrighty, it has just finished processing. So I turned off the burner. I've moved the canner to the side. And now all I'm going to do is wait for this to come completely down to 0 pressure. I want to see that little valve back there drop. Once I see that, then I'm going to remove the rocker, and I'm going to just open the lid and just let it rest slightly for a few minutes. And then after I do that, I'll remove the lid and I'll take the jars out, and I'll bring you back then. All right, here they are. They are just bubbling away. I think that most of them are going to seal. I think there are a couple that aren't going to seal, but you know what? Every time I use my double stack canner, this happens. It seems like there's always a couple that don't seal. But we will see. I'm just going to give it time and see if the temperature change helps them. I will let you know what happens once I've given them some time to completely come down to room temperature. All right, y'all. I am so happy to report that every single jar sealed. I was so surprised. I left them alone last night. I went upstairs for a while and hung out with my mom, and I came downstairs. By then, all the jars had come down completely to room temperature, and every single one of them had sealed. I was so happy. I couldn't wait. I still wound up using my little thing to pop the lids with, a little bottle opener thing, and had a bowl of this last night, and it was so good. I can't tell you how much better it is made with real chicken, like chicken breast on the bone with the skin and everything. The flavor of the broth is off the charts. And the flavor of the chicken and just how tender it is. And there's just something, I don't know what it is. I mean, obviously I know there's flavor in the skin. There's flavor when you're actually stewing the bones and stuff. But the chicken itself just tastes better when it's not been separated from its bones and everything before you boil it. Anyway, I highly recommend doing it that way. This is something that if you wanted to have this for, any meal, it's delicious absolutely as it is. I usually would just sprinkle in a little more pepper because I really like pepper in soups and things. But another thing you could do after you've canned it and you've had it in your pantry, if you want to add a little something extra to it, you don't ever can with this. Don't try to put this in when you can it. But after it's been canned, if you open a jar and you put it in a pot to heat up on the stove, you can actually make little dumplings to go in it. You can either whip you up some quick dumplings by just mixing some self-rising flour and water. I have a video about making we call it pastry, but dumplings to put in like chicken and pastry. So you could do that, but you also, if you wanted to be really quick, and you don't mind some processed foods every now and then, you could get a can of Pillsbury biscuits, not the flaky layers ones, but the ones that are, I think, called Southern style, and just pinch a couple of those biscuits off into little balls and drop it in the broth. If you want, you can add a little bit more chicken broth to it, and it'll make it a little extra. It'll just give you a little something extra, but this soup is perfect exactly as it is. And it's so inexpensive. I mean, a package of chicken, some corn, and you have got between 18 and 20 pints or 9 to 10 quarts of this amazing soup. If you do quarts of this, you'll can them for 90 minutes rather than 75 minutes. You'll have to look up your own pressure for canning because we're at sea level. Anything up to 1,000 feet is about 10 or 11 pounds pressure, but above that, then you start canning at a higher pressure. I love this. I hope you'll make this. I hope you'll let me know what you think in the comments below. I also hope that you're making some other things and putting them in your pantry before winter gets here. That way you've got some delicious soups that you can crack open any day to have for lunch. It's just such a quick, healthy option to feed yourself, to feed your family. You're not having to get fast food or anything like that. So many great options. So again, make this. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Also, let me know what else you're canning. I want to know what else you've been up to, what you've been canning. Are there any recipes you've made that you don't love? Let me know what you're avoiding that you've made that you're just not crazy about. As always, I want to thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.